Garrett, let's take a moment and say thank you to our sponsors at Fuji Sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've been working with us for a very long time, not only on this podcast, but also at the Academy. And I'm taking a peek at their website right now, and they have a brand new ultra light gi. Now, this is mind-blowing. I'm looking at my size. A2 is 2.75 pounds. I mean, that's under 3 pounds. That's mind-blowing.
I could even lift that. And go to their website, fujisports.com. Check it out. Anything you could need for your jiu-jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Hey, it's been a while since we started RŌL TV project.
It's been a while since you started it. I did come in later, and I can't say enough about it, especially the new platform. It's really amazing, fully customizable, and you know a little bit more about the structure.
Well, so two things you need to know. One is the subscription service, which is $9 a month. You can get access to hundreds of videos, hundreds of drills, techniques, and so on in a very nice library categorized as you need them. But two, different lessons. You can actually purchase those individually and you own them. So the subscription is not tied to it at all. You can look at things like spider guard, half guard sweeps, half guard chokes, folding pass, and so on. There's so many of them out there. So take a look and see where you need help with the videos, right? 30%. If you type in RŌL Radio as a code.
Who doesn't like saving money? Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. On this, our 100th episode, we are fortunate enough to have with us a true martial artist in every sense of the word, Rafael Lovato Senior. Rafael discusses growing up on the rough west side of Chicago, how boxing and traditional martial arts changed his life, training smart for the older grappler, the combination of nature and nurture, and so much more. Here's the 100th episode of the RŌL Radio with Saulo Ribero Black Belt, one half of the first American father and son BJJ Black Belt team, and a pioneer in Oklahoma martial arts, Rafael Lovato Senior.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we're live. Gary, how are you, sir?
I'm good. You asked me if I was ready, and I said I'm always ready, but then I had to double check that I hit the record button.
If the red button is lit up.
Yes.
Hey, listen, are you realizing that this is a big milestone for you and I?
It is. It's a very big one.
We have survived 100 episodes.
This is it, our 100th.
This is a 100 episode, and we're not even counting all the little things that takeaways and all the little things that those don't count.
Yes, no, I mean they're there. Go listen for sure, but I don't consider those. They're not full episodes, and they're not with a guest. So.
Right, but isn't it mind blowing?
It
100 different individuals that we have the privilege to talk to.
Yeah, it's pretty great, and I think they run the gamut of pioneers. You know, people that are new, young, older, everything in between, and it's been a ton of fun. Ryan Ford said the average podcast
I was about to say the same thing.
Runs for 7 episodes, so we are, like us or not, we're far above the average, I guess.
But I mean, 100 episodes behind us, tens of thousands of listens or downloads. I mean, at this point, I don't know if we consider this a success, but it's definitely fun.
It's fun, and I think it's a success because we still want to do it, and people are listening. So, and the numbers aren't going in the opposite direction. So, yeah, of course, it's a success. I can't talk. I'm so excited. Success. There we go.
Well, we're doing something right, I suppose. We impact in jiu-jitsu community in a positive way, providing a perspective and a big thanks to our guests. And today is
this is a good one.
This is a good one. Not any less than that. Professor Lovato Senior is in the house. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you.
We didn't even tell you that you are episode number 100. So
wow, what an honor!
Yeah,
that's exciting.
And this complete coincidence too. I mean, we kind of sort of were planning this, but this is just unfolded that way. So we are really happy.
Yeah, we got lucky that everything.
Fell right in place. How are you? So you're originally from Chicago, huh?
Yes. Chicago's my hometown, and I love Chicago. Love going back every chance I get. And Chicago has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, it's what a great city.
Yeah, born and raised here. I know Thomas came a little bit later, but yeah, I can't say enough about it. I love that city. I was just in it, so we're not that far out. We're in the suburbs, but I spent last Sunday in the city. And
oh, that's right. You went to a ball game, right?
Oh, that was the week before. So yeah, I did
before?
go to the Cubs game. Sat in the bleachers for the first time in like 30 years, and it'll be another 30 before I sit in the bleachers again. It was a madhouse. But no, my friend owns a few bars in the city, and I went to his newest location, and it was
Don't
wonderful.
tell any stories.
It was in the old neighborhood.
Keep the listeners.
No, it was in the old neighborhood, and I love the city. I just
Good for you.
It, so.
Good for you. Good for you. What's your favorite part of Chicago? Or is that unfair question?
There are so many wonderful neighborhoods in Chicago, but I've, downtown Grant Park, that area. I used to go to. I would take special classes at the Roosevelt University downtown.
Sure. Downtown,
when I was
right?
a kid, and I studied art there, and so there's just something about going downtown, just walking around through that whole area, and then of course Hyde Park is beautiful. But like I said, some of the neighborhoods I remember as a boy going through, I had aunts, uncles, cousins that lived in different parts of the city, and the brownstones, the architecture is just beautiful.
Yeah, it certainly is. Not much has changed from that perspective. I always liked downtown. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I've worked downtown for many, many years. Most of my career, actually, I worked downtown. Before I moved my job to suburbs, and now I don't have a job anymore. Now I teach Jiu Jitsu.
Oh, you're working. You have a job.
But I do recall some of those, especially summertime. The walks downtown and the ride on the pier and all that. That was a lot of fun. Listen, I said this off the record before we start recording, but as I was getting ready for this conversation, as I was looking at some of the things that you have done in the past as part of your journey, as part of your life, it became actually very difficult for me to kind of pinpoint what we want to narrow this conversation to. The amount of accomplishments that you have done in your life is actually quite mind-blowing. Do you mind, just before you even say what exactly I'm talking about, do you mind sharing what gives you the drive to study martial arts and become certified in all these different arts and methods and being so influential in your community?
Well, thank you very much for asking, and I feel very honored that you would think that I've accomplished something, but I think a lot of it comes down to will and drive. When I was a boy, it's kind of a strange thing about me. If someone told me I couldn't do something, I was determined to prove them wrong. And I became fascinated. Of course, I'm much older than you guys. I'm 64 now, so I'm a product of the 60s. And growing up in Chicago during the 1960s was a fascinating experience. But I'll never forget one night, my mother asked me, "Do you want to see Kato?" And who's Kato? Then I remember seeing a trailer of Bruce Lee on the Green Hornet. And I thought, yes, I want to see this guy. Man, I couldn't wait to watch the television series. And I remember watching Bruce Lee move, and I was fascinated by that. And I decided then and there that I was going to study martial arts. Plus, kind of on a sad note, where I grew up, unfortunately, there was a lot of violence. There was a lot of gang violence. There was a lot of it was pretty tough growing up in my neighborhood, especially in the 60s. And, you kind of get to the place where you get a little tired of it. So I became originally a real student of boxing. And by that, I mean not only studying boxing, but I could actually tell you the history from pre-Marquis of Queensberry rules all the way afterward. I could tell you the statistics, boxing champions of different weight divisions, who they fought, who they lost to. I studied boxing. I was fascinated by the sport. So hence, as a boy, my two big heroes were Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee. It wasn't until I was 14 years old that I walked into a martial arts school for the first time and formally began to study traditional martial arts. But by that time, I had done a lot of boxing and like I said, studied boxing, martial arts, did a lot of reading and research. And so one led to the other. And on a side note, kind of a funny story, my aunt and uncle moved out to Villa Park. And, I thought it was so neat. I would go there pretty much every weekend, take the Al to the end of the line, and my cousin and my uncle would meet me there, and I'd spend the weekend with them. Well, one weekend, my mother and I were there spending the weekend with my cousins and my aunt and uncle. And Bruce Lee in those days used to visit various cities and do promos for the production company that did Batman and the Green Hornet. And so my mother asked me, do you want to go meet Kato? Because he was visiting Oak Brook Mall. And I told her, yeah, I want to go see Kato. Of course I want to go see him. So the funny thing is, I'm so excited. I'm ready to go like now. But my mother, my aunt, they were fixing themselves up. In those days, everybody always dressed up. By the time they fixed their hair, got their makeup, we finally get to Oak Brook Mall, and we just missed him. He had just left. So I came that close to meeting Bruce Lee. But I got to see the Black Beauty, a lot of the gadgets, the motorcycles, the Batmobile, a lot of the promotional objects that they used for the series. But I was so heartbroken that I missed meeting him because I was so excited about it. But later on, little did I know that later on I would get to do the next best thing and meet and train and learn from many of his old friends and students, from Dan Rosano, Rucha Bustillo, to Jerry Poteet, and so many others that I'd had the privilege of meeting, training with, and actually spending a lot of time with.
How was that conversation with your mom after you guys missed Bruce Lee?
Oh, man. Well, you don't know my mother. My mother was kind of tough, because, hey, my neighborhood, you had to be. So, yeah, I was disappointed. I was really bummed out, but, hey, I knew better than to talk smack to her. That's for sure.
I think regardless of times, the mothers are always tougher ones.
Oh, yeah. Can't be beat.
I remember my dad was always tough, but when my mom gave me the look, like you knew you were in trouble.
Yeah, it's all over.
Listen, I think if I'm not mistaken, Chicago boxing was one of those, I wouldn't say pioneers, maybe. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit more about this, but it was well-established boxing community all around Chicago. It was actually there was a foundation of the old school boxing as it was existing all around the country, wasn't it?
Yes. Some of the best boxers ever come out of Chicago. Yeah. Chicago is one of those cities like Philadelphia, of course, New York, some fantastic boxers that came out of Chicago. Unfortunately, I never was able to get that far with it. I boxed for a while, but then when I became fascinated with the traditional martial arts, that's where my attention shifted, and I began to really pursue that.
What was
on another funny side note, I finally at 14, I had a buddy that he was taking Taekwondo at the time, and I remember he and I would spar constantly and just beat the snot out of each other. And I didn't know what I was doing except boxing. So if I got close to him, kept him backing up, I could beat him. But if I was in range, if I was stepped back, then I had to watch out for his kicks. But he finally talked me into going to his studio where he was training. So I walked in, and of course, back then in those days, I was just a punk kid with a sarcastic mouth on me. I walked in, I met the instructor. I'll never forget him. His name was Dwayne Worley. Nice guy. He actually became like a father figure to me. But I introduced myself to him, and I said, yeah, I want to do this stuff. Give me 1 year, and I'll be better than anybody you have here.
Oh, that's a strong statement.
With this intense glare. And I thought for a moment, he was a big guy, so I thought for a moment he was going to pound me and kick me out right then and there. But then all of a sudden, he just laughed, and he shook my hand real firmly. He says, prove it. And without bragging, 1 year later, I became like one of the enforcers. There was me and a couple of other guys that when someone came in with an attitude, it was our job to take care of them, or we were the guys that were the top, the 18 competitors when we went out traveling and competing in various places.
Funny you mentioned the enforcers, quote unquote, because I'm curious if that's how the times were shaped back then.
Yes.
Some time ago, we talked to Chris Howder, who,
I know Chris.
I mean, huge pioneer of Jiu Jitsu, right? I mean, Dirty Dozen and the whole 9 yards. But he was talking about that you get a call from your instructor, hey, there's somebody visiting the academy. I need you to come suit up and come in because we gotta.
Yeah.
We there's a test right now. Is that similar fashion that was unfolding in boxing back then?
In boxing, it was a little weird because it was just kind of rough. Everybody, especially street kids, everybody had to prove themselves, and you had your top guys that would school you if you needed to. You had to prove yourself. You had to work yourself up into an acceptance, as it were. But for some reason, the martial arts came very, very easy to me. And, not that I was ever any kind of a great athlete, but like I said earlier, I think it was my discipline. For some reason, I realized that it took a lot more discipline and a lot more strength to be a real martial artist than to be just another punk, thug on the street. And I could have gone a very different direction. I actually got in trouble with the cops when I was just 7 years old for the first time there in Chicago. But I realized that in martial arts, it took a lot more work. And so I was one of those kids. I would get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, do a 2-mile run, and I would do bag work. I had a double end ball. I would jump rope. And so I think that's one reason why I progressed as fast as I did. Plus, I had one advantage over the other Taekwondo guys was my hands. Because, it's pretty hard to kick when you're backing up.
Right.
It's pretty hard to kick someone when you're in their face. And one thing I discovered back then that the Taekwondo guys especially, they didn't know that boxers had the footwork, the angles, and the head movements, and we could pretty much neutralize the kicking ability.
So you talk about boxing as big foundation for you. Then you talk about Taekwondo kind of phasing into those traditional marks and the first milestone of leading towards the martial art lifestyle, if you will. And then you talk about getting up at 4 or 4:30 in the morning and running and doing bag work and all that stuff. Where does this motivation come from? Like, where is this sourcing? Looking in the retrospect right now, because I'll tell you, I don't know one 14-year-old who in the world will get up at 4:30, let alone run 2 miles or do bag work just because they like something. I mean, that's unheard of.
Well, I can tell you quite honestly. Unfortunately, when I was a kid, actually I was a baby, my father died. And my mother was an 18-year-old widow and with a little baby. And it was pretty rough. And, sadly, it almost sounds like a cliche, but I was 5 years old when she remarried. And unfortunately, the man she married was, he was a rough guy and he could be a very, very bad drunk. And so he would put me down a lot. And plus I got a lot of beatings from him. And so somehow I determined within myself that I wanted to rise above that. I wanted to prove these people wrong that thought that I would never amount to anything, especially when I started hanging out with the wrong kind of kids, getting in trouble. I was determined to show that no matter how hard you had to work, I was going to do the work to rise to a level as high as I could and achieve as much as I possibly could. I didn't want to be defined by my past or what he had done. I didn't want to be just another sad story of another typical minority kid in Chicago that just ended up in prison or ended up shot on the street. I wanted to try to achieve something. And that's, I think, where a lot of that came from. And plus, I have to say, and I don't mean this as a cliche, but I have to say, in all honesty, I tell people all the time, I'm like walking, living, breathing proof there is a God, because he was sure good to me and watched out for me.
So you think that there was a higher, so essentially what you're saying, that things happen for a reason, in a sense. There's some kind of path for every single one of us. And, there's things meant to be for us in the future. Gary and I, we talked about this quite a bit, whether it's the hard work or is the path is kind of, a grandfather, if you will, or set for us ahead of time.
Yeah, I was just thinking while you were telling your story is that there's so many kids in your neighborhood and in the neighborhoods we grew up in that go the other way.
Exactly.
And it seems, as hard as that life is, that's always seems to me, now that I'm older at least, that's like the easy choice. Even though that life is miserable, that's the easy choice. And the hard choice is getting up at 4 a.m. and putting in the work. you know. And I've noticed, you know, listening to interviews with you in the past and stuff, I'm thinking to myself that you almost have to be born with it. You know, it seems like you were born with it. Your son was born with it. And to me now, I'm conflicted. Is it nature? Is it nurture? And I really don't know.
I think it's a combination of both. And I recognize that in Rafael at a very, very young age. People ask me all the time, because I've taught in Europe, Canada, all over the U.S., and I love the lifestyle. People ask me about Rafael all the time. And one thing I can say about him, I tell people I began training him before he could walk. But one thing I did with him was I always associated martial arts with fun. It was our time to bond. It was dad-son time. It was fun time, hanging out. He would hang out with me and my training partners. And I never told him he had to compete. I just wanted him to be able to defend himself should he have to. And I wanted him to establish good exercise habits. He's the one that told me that he wanted to compete. And one big difference with Rafael, he had this tremendous God-given talent. But talent, as you guys know, will only take you so far. And I'm sure, Thomas, you've had many talented guys come in the gym. But if you don't have discipline and character to back up that talent, you'll only get to a certain level.
Yeah, I mean, you're right 100% about this. And forget about Jiu Jitsu, but even look historically about just athletes all around the world of different disciplines. Yes. Talent will only give you the opportunity to do what you can, but the work ethic, the approach, the mental state, the drive, the passion, that really what will take you beyond that. And you know, unfortunately, not all of us have the talent. Not all the athletes have the talent that others do, and that's what makes it not fair. And life is not fair. I often say that life is not fair. You know, it is what it is. But it does not mean that we cannot achieve some of those, you know, mind-blowing successes, whatever we set the goals for ourselves. So as this is unfolding, you know, you go through boxing, you go through Taekwondo. At which point, first of all, when are you reaching into Jeet Kune Do? Because that's a big focal point of your passion from the beginning, right? It seems like you're moving away from it.
Yes. So I had the opportunity. In the meantime, I had married Cindy, my wife, and I'm happy to say that this August we'll be married 42 years.
Whoa, congratulations to you guys. Phenomenal.
Thank you very much. And we decided that we would move to Cincinnati, Ohio. Cindy is from Oklahoma. And it was actually, I was visiting Oklahoma City and because of martial arts. And we met. And anyway, we get married. And we lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. That is, in fact, where Rafael was born. We were there for almost 10 years. Well, I began studying there, Kali and JKD. There was a young man there named Eldon Clem, who had moved to Cincinnati to go to Union Theological Seminary. And he had spent a lot of time in LA training with Dan Onosano, Richard Bustillo, many others. In fact, Larry Hartzell was the best man at his wedding. So he was very, very close to the JKD community in Los Angeles. So he and I became really good friends, and he made me an offer. He asked me to be his personal training partner. He liked my boxing. He liked my my movements, what skills I had back then. And so I would train with him. In fact, we would meet at 5 o'clock in the mornings, and we would train for a couple of hours before he had to start his studies at the university. And so it was through Eldon that he introduced me to Dan Inosanto and Richard Bustillo. They were both at different times. Richard Bustillo came out there to do a seminar, and that's how I met him. And Richard, if you know anything about him, he was a boxer in Hawaii. In fact, there was at one time lightweight champion, they called him Kid Gavilan, that was Richard's cousin. And Richard and I, when we met, somehow we just hit it off because we just spoke that same language. We both came from a boxing background. And, Dan Onosano was awesome meeting with him. And I've trained with him many, many times since the 1980s, all over the place. I would go and train with him. But there was just something about Richard. And we just really hit it off. And so that's how I was introduced to the JKD community. And eventually, it was through Richard Bastille that I was actually introduced to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Are you at that time, go back in a moment, in that time, as all this is unfolding, you're meeting these guys and you starting this new path, if you will, are you comprehending the magnitude of the people that you are meeting? Because all the names you are dropping, these are some of the originals of
Yes.
JKD, traditional martial arts in U.S. I mean, these guys, indirectly impacted to what we are able to do today. Without them, martial art as a art to be presented out would probably didn't exist, or would look very different than it does today.
Exactly.
Are you comprehending at that time?
Oh,
what
yes.
were you part of?
Believe me, I was overwhelmed by it. I was blown away by it. In fact, the funny story here, the night before I was going to meet Dan Inosanto, and I met him first before meeting Richard Bastille. The night before I met him, I could hardly sleep. And I had one of his books out, and I would look at that book it seemed like every few minutes I would look at it and I said, man, I'm going to be meeting him tomorrow. I can't believe it. I'm about to meet Dan Inosanto. Yes, I was very starstruck. In fact, this is going to seem kind of crude in a way, but I'm going to tell you, this is hilarious. When I met Dan Inosanto, I'm in the seminar. And, there's one thing that I've learned through the years of teaching is that people love to hear their name. So whenever I'm teaching a group, I always make it a point. In fact, people are all amazed that I remember people's names. In fact, when I come to your place, Thomas, I guarantee you I'll be there at least 30 to 40 minutes early, and I'm going to meet everyone, introduce myself. I want to get their name. So the funny thing that happened was, I think part of it I got from Danny, because I'll never forget, we were taking a break, and I went to the restroom, and there was a couple of stalls, and I think there was one stall. It was a small bathroom at this community center, and there was 2 urinals. So I'm standing there at the urinal doing my business, and I hear the door open and someone walk in, and I hear them say, "Hey, Rafael, how's it going?" And I'm like, what? I know that voice. It was Dan Inosanto. And so Danny comes up into the urinal next to me, and he's like doing his business, and I'm just standing there blown away. I'm like, man, right now I'm urinating next to Dan Inosanto. I'll never forget that. It was the most hilarious thing. Yeah, I was starstruck. I was blown away by the people that I met. And I remember meeting many of these people for the first time and being absolutely, giddy because, I don't know. Because yes, I did recognize it and I appreciated it.
I mean, what a better place to meet him than it makes a good story at least, right? I mean, oh man, this is okay. So at that point, you're being introduced to jiu-jitsu. Is this where your jiu-jitsu path begins?
That's a different thing. I had by this time I had become very well acquainted with Richard Bastille. Mm-hmm. And I'd become a part of his association. And I remember with Richard, you had to go through, it was almost like back in the old days when before Bruce Lee passed away, you had, they called it phases back then, that you went through as part of your rank. There were 4 phases. I went through all those phases. Eldon Klen took me through all those phases. In fact, he told me I progressed faster than anyone he trained with. And so at the next level was to get instructorship. And back in those days, I'm not sure if it's still that way, but there were 3 more steps you had to go through: your apprenticeship, your associate instructorship, and then full instructor. So I attained my instructorship level with Richard Bastille. And one of the things that he would do was every year he would have a big instructors conference in Los Angeles at his school in Torrance. So there would be people there from all over the world. And we would train. We would interact with each other and help each other out with business ideas, with various marketing strategies. So it was great to meet different people. And then the training was always fun, awesome. And Richard would bring in guest instructors. And this one year, I'll never forget, he brought the Machado brothers. And it was Carlos and John. No, not John. It was Roger that was there, and one of their students, and I think Keegan was there. And so at this point, I had trained. Actually, I'd achieved a brown belt in Japanese jiu-jitsu by this time, but I'd heard of, at those early days, I began to hear about Brazilian jiu-jitsu, the Gracie Challenge and all that. So
What year is this? What year is this?
This is, I'm thinking like 92,
Okay.
93, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And so the Machado brothers come out, they teach, and I'm like, man, this is pretty neat stuff, And then they spar with all of us and basically tied us all up like in pretzels, And that was when I was like, man, I have got to learn this. And so I actually visited the Machado School in Redondo Beach, and I had a rental car, and I went there. I was doing their classes because I was in LA for like a week, 10 days, something like that. And so I began training with them and just learning as much as I possibly could, and brought that back to Oklahoma City with me.
Let me ask you this. You know boxing, you know JKD, you know Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and, a lot of little things in between all of these. And then you stumble upon Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. How is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu different from all the other ones? And the reason why I'm asking, oftentimes we have individuals coming to the academy and all around the world, for that matter, and they say, well, this Jiu-Jitsu thing, I heard about it. Is it like karate? Is it like taekwondo? Is it like boxing or wrestling? And sometimes it's very difficult to explain with these anchors, with the more traditional martial arts. So I want to pick your brain. You've done it. You've been there. You've experienced it with some of the pioneers of these arts. How is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu different in your mind than all the other martial arts?
Well, there's in a couple of respects that when I explain to people, first of all is the grappling aspect. And one thing I explain, especially growing up the way I did, I can tell people with confidence that most fights will end up in some kind of a grappling situation. You're going to hug, you're going to grapple, you're going to be up and close and personal, and you'll probably even end up on the ground. Man, in my opinion, is a natural grappler. Now, the other thing is that I love about jiu-jitsu is that it was designed for people like my size. I'm only 5'8", and my competition weight is 150 pounds, so I'm a small guy. So the technique, the leverage that you can develop, and the advantage that it can give you over someone much larger and stronger. I love that component of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The other thing is the sheer technical array of techniques involved with it. It's constantly challenges you. You're never going to learn it all. It motivates you. It intrigues you. I've been doing it now for so many years. I'm a 4th degree black belt, and I have to confess that I tell people I know that much. I'm still learning every time I go to class. And in fact, selfishly, whenever I teach seminars, I love the different gym culture when I go, where I go, because I'll pick up things. I'll see things that people are doing. I think, you know what? That's a nice idea. I kind of like that. Maybe I'll utilize that and maybe modify it for me. And the other thing, at 64, I'm still training. I competed up until just a few years ago. And so you can do it if you're careful and you train smart, you can do it for the rest of your life. I can still box. I have a banana bag out in my garage. I love to hit the bag. I love shadow boxing. I love kicking, but I can't move like I used to, but the jiu-jitsu, I can still be very competitive, have a lot of fun, and still do it even at my age. But I think, especially combining the jiu-jitsu with striking, and that's something where I'm very different with a lot of people. Personally, I'm not a big fan. I love the sport. I love the competition side. Believe me, I do. Like I said, I've competed even up until a couple years ago, but I believe that it's more important to be a complete martial artist. And ultimately, the soul of jiu-jitsu was developed for self-defense, not sport. And like I always tell people out in the street, there's no weight divisions, referee, nice soft mat, medals, belts, trophies, all of that. You never can dictate who you're going to compete with or who you're going to fight with or where. And I challenge people, have you ever tried doing jiu-jitsu with shoes on or restrictive clothing? try doing a De La Hiva or your spider guard with shoes on. It's very, very different. One time I had to get into a fight in a public swimming pool in 5 feet of water. Let me tell you, man, the last thing on my mind was working my spider guard.
There you go. Gary, who was telling us that they got in a street fight and they were trying to pendulum sweep somebody and they got punched in the face? I don't remember.
It was Kaiki's son got into a fight in a parking lot with another jiu-jitsu competitor, and the guy did deep half in the parking lot, and he hit the guy, and the guy looked up and said, "You can't do that." And he said, "We're in a street fight. I can do whatever I want." You know what I mean? You can do whatever you want. Go back a couple seconds. What does train smart at your age mean?
Well, first of all, every school has those guys. They're kind of the ones that, when they get on the mat to train, it's not just training, it's life and death. It's like there is $1 million on the line, Those guys I absolutely stay away from because I know, and I've done it before, I've gone with those guys, and I always regret it because even though I will submit them, I'll dominate them, I always pay for it somehow. You're going to catch an elbow. You're going to catch a headbutt. You're going to something, especially at my age, I get hurt really easy.
That's like rolling with Gary.
Oh, please. Please.
I'm just messing around.
Yeah, not because I want the $1 million. It's because I'm a spaz.
But what I do is we have some really good purple belts I like to train with, especially these guys that are super agile, like to invert, or they're doing all the new stuff. I like to train with them because if I can shut them down, then I know I can. For me, it's a good workout, and I definitely know I can do that with someone my age because people my age don't invert or do crazy stuff like that. Or I'll train with a lot of the brown and black belts because they're at a technical level where they don't have to rely on erratic strength movements. So it's more of a technical exchange. Like right now, we have Victor Hugo here in town hanging out for the week, training with us. And Shanji comes in tonight. We have Felipe Costa. We have several other people that are coming in.
We just had Felipe on that.
I'll train with these guys, but I have a blast with them because even as big as Victor is, I never get hurt. I just have a lot of fun because he's so good technically. And of course, my son, he and I train together at least once, twice a week. I train with him Monday night, in fact. We rolled, and I'm planning on going tonight to get in some training because I love getting on the mat with Shanji. So training smart, going with the really technical guys, having fun, and I set goals for myself, within myself to try to achieve. So I want to keep it fun. And, for example, when I go with Rafael, I try never to get swept, which, of course, I do. But maybe instead of 4 times, it's going to be 3 times or 2 times this session or whatever, But so I can have a lot of fun and train in that way with good technical people.
You were mentioning something extremely important, I think, often underestimating by students, especially in the very beginning of the journey, and that's setting goals, setting tangible goals, smart goals. And as you go going through the conversation right now, it just keeps popping in my head. It's, you going with Junior and your goal is not to get swept. That's a tangible goal. For most of the guys out there, that will be like, no, I need to submit them. And this conversation often takes place between student and instructor. It's not always about the submission. Sometimes it's about escaping. Sometimes it's about controlling. Sometimes it's about not allowing them to get a grip. That on its own could be not only fundamentally benefiting, but also so challenging that it's mind-blowing. Right? And I often say this, if we take, let's say, 150-pound individual and 250-pound individual, like you and Hugo, right? For instance, there's no way, at least in my mind, you tell me if I'm wrong, but in my mind, there's no way that you can compete with him strength-wise.
No, no way.
So why would you engage into that exchange? That's the maturity level in Jiu-Jitsu. This is where Jiu-Jitsu becomes really beautiful in my mind, where it's not about submission. The submission is the consequence of what you're doing, is the result, is the end, is the just the play. That's the final test. But everything in between, that's the beauty. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree 100%. Yes. And to me also, it's really wonderful because there's a degree of trust.
Oh, yeah.
The funny thing about like these guys like Shanji and Saulo Ribero, I'm the only man in the world besides their own father that they refer to as Papa. I'm Papa, Cindy is Mama. And they treat me with that respect, like I'm their own dad. And Victor, all the guys. We've had Lucas Lepre here. We've had Romulo Bahal was just here not too long ago. I got to roll with Romulo, Tarsus Humphreys. And these guys, I love getting on the mat with them because I know they're not going to try to hurt me. There's that respect. They had that respect for me, and I respect them, of course. And we just have a fun exchange of technique. And, it's just, I love that about Jiu Jitsu, that camaraderie. But when you stop and think of it, it's a very intimate sport anyway. It's an intimate art. You learn a lot about a person when you can hear them breathing and almost hear them thinking. When you're on top of someone and you can feel them twitching and those muscle fibers start to go into action to initiate a move. And of course, no one wants to be the smelly guy or the guy with a bad breath or the guy with the stinky gi. So, Jiu-Jitsu guys, I think, are some of the most hygienic people. And because it's so intimate, you have that bond that develops even faster than in like boxing. Boxing, there could always be that intimidation factor or that unacceptance or, hey, you're not a part of our group, or, hey, you haven't proved yourself yet, With Jiu-Jitsu, you're welcomed into the community right away. And people understand, yes, there's a hierarchy, but as long as you're diligent, as long as you're respectful, and as long as you stay with it, and the bad ones never do. Yeah. They're eventually, somehow, some way, they're going to go somewhere else anyway. Yeah. So I love that about Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Zanji, when we had a conversation with Zanji, one of the things that he said is, we literally put our life in our partner's hands. And that is developing that trust, that relationship without speaking, not even many words. It's just the actions, right? I mean, what other activity out there would you allow your partner, literally to choke you or put a joint manipulation or some kind of, pressure that could potentially put you in a very high risk position? And here we're doing this willingly. I often say this to my students. Jiu-Jitsu is the only activity where you come in with a smile on your face, you get choked out, you leave with a smile on your face, and you pay for it. Where else does this happen? This doesn't happen anywhere else.
Really?
I love CrossFit guys, but you don't see them beating crap out of each other. I mean, again, all the respect to CrossFit guys. But I'm just saying that it's a very unique environment that we have. Moments ago, you touched upon true martial artists. Such a powerful, but yet sometimes overused statement. I want to pick your brain. What does that really mean to you? What is true martial artist?
The first thing that comes to my mind is, I think a true martial artist is a lifelong student. And they don't have an exaggerated, puffed up image of themselves. I think a true martial artist will always be humble. And I think of humility, not just in a Judeo-Christian perspective, but I think of a person once said that humility is power in control. And I think a true martial artist should have that kind of control over themselves, where they're not going to give in to anger. They're not going to give in to someone taunting them on the street or challenging. They're going to have the resolve and the wherewithal to walk away and say, it's not necessary. I don't need to do this. I think also of respect. There's that incessant longing to learn, to improve, and to be open and humble, to be corrected and learn new things. That's the first thing I think of as a true martial artist.
Do you think that we always learn something in martial arts in general, or there is end to it at some point?
No, I think you always learn, especially if you have the attitude to be teachable, the hunger to learn. Some people, and I have met some people that there are these self-proclaimed masters, and in my opinion, I think that word gets used a little too generously. But there's some people that they think of themselves as a little bit higher and loftier than what they really are. And to me, I think that's that's not healthy. I think that's something that you always will learn, no matter how high in rank you get.
Do you think that's why often once we achieve these levels of black belt, let's say, by some that's viewed as a point of expertise, but for the ones who do receive it, often that's a point of reflection of saying, now I'm really trying to learn more. And now I really want to open the door to even inquire more information. Such an interesting dynamic there, isn't it?
Yes. And I think that's very, very true. It doesn't necessarily mean, especially in jiu-jitsu, like when you get to corral belt and higher, I think, these men, oftentimes they're in their late 60s, 70s. And of course, you can't make the same expectations on a man at that age as a man in his 20s. But I think it shows, like the rank is evidence of their hard work, their time spent in learning and training. And I think that should be rewarded. You go to a university with the hopes of graduating, with the hopes of getting that diploma. And what is that certificate or diploma? It's proof of your hard work and your diligence and the time you spent and the sacrifice you made to learn. And I think that very much of a belt. I've had a student one time that absolutely refused to go for his blue belt. And I told him it was necessary because with rank also comes responsibility. And plus, people look up to you. You're representing the art. You should be an example of that hard work and that time put in. So that's my point of view. And I've met some great men who I really respect that are corral belts and had fun talking to them, learning from them. And I know the ones, at least that I have met, feel the same way.
Isn't it mind-blowing how sometimes these conversations with these individuals with so much wisdom, me personally, I feel like I'm learning just from the conversation more than being on the mat with them and going through the techniques because of the philosophy and the like, I don't even know how to word this, but like just the presence itself, the passion is just radiating out of them, and it's like it's just mind blowing. Like
and you're receptive to it, which I think is what you were touching on just a second ago, is to always be that student. You have that attitude of what can I gain from this conversation or this time just sitting here on the mat. And also I think, you're talking about becoming a black belt. I think, I don't remember who we were talking to, but they were talking about like when you graduate and you're called a surgeon, well, now you have to put it into practice. You can't just have that diploma and call yourself that. And I think when you're a black belt, and hopefully, someday I'll get there, but that's the time now you put everything that you built up to that point now into practice. And that's kind of how I look at it. And I don't know if you see it the same way or not, but all that knowledge, all that skill, all that hard work, now you're putting it into practice. And by that, I mean, working on it for yourself, but also sharing it with everybody else.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're absolutely right on that. Absolutely right. So do you find yourself more of a student or instructor?
I think of myself more as a student.
Isn't that mind-blowing? I mean, there's thousands of people. If not, I don't even know, but I would imagine there's tens of thousands of people who know you, might know you personally. They come to Academy because of you. They come to train with you. You are the purpose, but yet you tell me that you are a student.
No, I will always be a student. If anything, I think of myself, it's funny, as a student, but as a facilitator, as someone who just wants to share what little bit I have. In fact, I have a lady right now does private lessons with me, and she wants to focus on self-defense. And I love doing that. I love sharing that. You get this great, I know, I'm sure you feel the same way, Thomas. You get this great satisfaction out of sharing technique with someone, and all of a sudden see that light bulb go off, oh, wow, man, and see them feel empowered and more confident and self-assured. Some years ago, I had an opportunity to do something. It was really an amazing experience. I had a student who was a psychiatrist, and he had a group of women. It was about 20 women, and all of them had been victims of abuse of some kind. And I remember when I first met this group of women, I worked with them for 6 weeks for 6 Saturdays. And I was very careful not to even shake their hands, just say hello. I respected their space. And by the end of those 6 weeks, in teaching them basic self-defense, it was amazing to see them get this confidence and this self-assuredness. And they were hugging me, or they were thanking me for what I shared with them. Now, how do you replicate that kind of feeling unless you're sharing with someone else, and yet still learning yourself as well? So I love that combination, and then it only comes in this unique way from martial arts.
Yeah, and I'm shaking my head because literally last weekend we had a self-defense workshop for ladies who were interested in it, and we partnered up with ANU, which is local organization who supports women in those tough situations. And it was interesting because one of the ladies was very, very cautious, very apprehensive even about, touching and being in those positions, right? And you're right. You have to be very careful of what you say, how you say it, what you do, because clearly there's an experience. But at some point, she says, I don't know if I can do this. Right now, and she makes the statement, right now, we are friendly and it's all good. But if this really happened, I really know if I can do this. So I said, well, I want you to do it one time. And I really want you to forget about everything happening around you. I want you to try this. Just use leverage, gravity, and think about mechanics more about what's happening around you, and just give it a shot. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll take it from there. And she does it. And then there's this smile. Then those eyes light up, and it that moment right there for me is more satisfying than anything else. It's like, boom. And guess what happened after that? She never mentioned I can't. She never mentioned this is not. And she was in. She was in. I was like, yes,
awesome,
win. So, but that brings to that point of satisfaction, right? Like as somebody who's sharing that knowledge, these epiphanies, these golden nuggets, these golden little things that happen in jiu-jitsu, like just yes, and it works.
It washes that stuff away. It's great to see, especially like in the kids class. It's so important that I've had so many kids that are like, I don't know how. Well, you don't know how because you haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
And you can. Yeah. And then you see them, like you're saying, you see them have those little breakthroughs, and they come back the next class a different person. It's really wonderful.
Yes.
Speaking of I can't, on the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned anytime anybody tells you, you can't do this is an obstacle, you won't be able to do it, whatever their reason is, it gives you fuel to prove them wrong in a sense. Yes. But what do you say to students who do experience this and they don't have that drive? They might be even more discouraged by being pushed. How do you solve that situation for other people? How do you help them?
One of the things that I have found that has actually become a very, very useful motivational tool is my age. Because when I meet people like that, especially if they're younger, and I've also heard it from older people, I'm too old, I can't do this. Now, there's something, a lot of people don't know this, but I was 37 years old when I had my first introduction to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So consequently, in virtually all the classes, I was the oldest, the slowest, and the weakest. And yet I kept doing it. I kept going. I kept getting smashed. I kept getting submitted. I kept getting strangled, but I just stayed with it. And so I feel like, and of course, like I said earlier as well, I've never been gifted athletically. I just worked really hard, and I found that I had to work twice as hard as others to achieve any kind of a satisfactory level. And so I tell people, look, I was the oldest, and yet I still have been able to make some degree of accomplishments. I've achieved this level. I've gotten this far. I have a long way that I want to go, hopefully. But if I can do it, so can you. And I don't say that as a cliche, but I use the fact that I was invariably the oldest guy in the class.
Yeah, we had Betty on the show. And how old is Betty? I don't even remember.
Betty now, 65, I think.
65, yeah. And then she started late.
I could be a little wrong about that, but yeah, she's in that age range.
Yeah, she started in her 50s, you know, and she was saying like what did she say? That most of her friends are looking for retirement homes, and she's looking for new Jiu-Jitsu academy.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, but it's like in these situations when we find ourselves in these situations, really some of those reasonings, I don't want to say excuse, but it's a negative kind of word. But some of these reasonings not to do things just simply fade away. Like how do you say I'm too old if this guy right here, he's way older than me and he still does it actively, you know? And it's such a mind blowing activity, if you will, isn't it?
Yes. And this is going to be great. I'm so excited about going to your school, Thomas. I'll give you a little preview of what I tell people these days. I teach GBJJ, geriatric Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes. Something for me.
The fascinating thing is that in my older age, I've taken a lot of the technique that younger, more athletic, stronger people are doing, and I've modified it for my age, where I can do the same technique, but in a little bit different way. One other thing, and I don't know if you know this, but I was a professional musician for years. I'm a classically trained organist. That's what I did in Cincinnati. I worked for the Archdiocese there for nearly 10 years. I was a choir master organist. And so I play Bach, Gigot, Vierne. I play this big, huge, massive pipe organ. So consequently, people have asked me, well, how do you do that? And these days I give concerts. How do you do that and do jiu-jitsu? Because you see so many guys with gnarly, messed up hands and fingers. What I've come up with was an idea of regripping. Like take a Bravo choke. I do it completely different where I don't have to switch grips and take a chance on jamming a finger. So you get innovative, you become an open-minded to modify different techniques so that you can do it and be active in spite of age restrictions or any physical restrictions.
Yeah, you are 100% right about this. And I've said this on this show multiple times, but I use this analogy of if we got 100 black belts in one room and asked them to teach the same technique, we are likely to get 100 different versions of it.
Exactly.
Because we are different age, we have different bodies, we have different brains, we work differently, we've had different experiences, we learn things differently. And that is the beautiful part behind jiu-jitsu, that the evolution that takes place. And that's why I love seminars. And you bring up being at RŌL Academy, and so let's plug this in. Let's blow this up. Nobody knows about this right now, but
keeping it a secret.
As this show is airing, a few weeks later, about a month later, you will be in Chicago area. You will be coming to RŌL Academy. It's going to be open to everybody. So now you guys know, book your spots because they're going to be limited, and unique opportunity to have you. And I'm actually really excited about this. You do bring a very unique jiu-jitsu style. You do have these creatively modified versions of different techniques. And if anybody follows you, social media or just out there, you are known for that. You have developed some of these slightly different, your own flavor, if you will. Am I right on that?
Yes, I guess so. To tell you the truth, Thomas, I don't follow myself. I'm technology challenged. Hey, I'm a kid from the West Side. I'm from the 60s. I don't do a lot of the YouTube or stuff like that. Students will ask me, well, this guy, he does this. Actually, no, I know some people. I watch some things sometimes. But I'm flattered that anybody would think of me that way. I really am. But really, quite honestly, it comes, if there's any notoriety there, it comes from good intentions. I'm glad to help people. And the one thing about the way I teach, anybody can benefit, regardless of rank, regardless of age. Because I found that with a lot of the techniques, there's a way to do it where it could give you more success, regardless of your level. Some seminars I've seen, people show the most complex, highly technical moves. And a lot of times the white belts or the new blue belts, they walk out of there and they're just confused. What was the first technique you did? I like when people come to my seminars, everybody has learned. Everybody has gained some kind of information there, whether they're new or advanced. Even the most advanced people say, hey, that's a different take on that technique. I never thought of that before. So I love to be able to share that.
What's next for you? You've been doing jiu-jitsu for so long. Are you ending this anytime soon?
No, I don't plan to. No, not at all. No. In fact, recently I've been training a little bit harder and doing Tabata sprints. I have an Airdyne. I have an elliptical in my garage. I'll go to the competition training on Saturdays a lot of times. I'll get on the rolling machine for 25 minutes and then jump on the mat and roll with some of the guys. I'm toying with the idea of maybe competing again. I know I'm in that bracket now. I think it's called the 1 foot in the grave division.
You are very humble and very funny, let me tell you. I hope I'm going to be actively training when I'm your age, so please.
But I don't know. I toy with that idea, and so hopefully we'll get out there. And, I have some issues, some physical issues, but you know what? Hey, I can hang in there for at least a couple of matches, So I'm toying with the idea of trying it again. And if not, I'm still going to train. I'm still going to have fun.
Walk me through, as we're talking about getting ready for competition or challenging yourself, picking up the amount or intensity of training. Walk me through your mind when you are trying to acquire new skill. So let's just say you're getting ready, whatever it is. You're trying to, better your conditioning, or you're just going through the motions. You want to prepare yourself mentally. How do you do that? Is there a thought process behind this? Do you plan things out, establish goals? I don't know, make notes, make a plan, what's your thought on all of this?
Well, there's two big components for me that are very important. One is the cardio. Because I've noticed in the last several times that I've competed, the cardio in my age division has made a big difference. Because in my division, I can go up against guys that have been black belts for 25 years, 30 years. So at a technical level, it's very, very challenging. These guys know all the tricks, and they're going to do apply the technique in the most expeditious manner. They're not going to waste any motion. The second thing is drilling, a lot of drilling. And typically what I do, I have like 3 to 4 takedowns that I do, and I'll just drill over and over and over and over, and then drill from different positions, do maybe positional sparring. I'll play a game within myself. And Rafael, my son, he does this a lot as well. We'll play a scenario like, okay, the guy's got me in side control. I'm down by 2 points. I've got to escape side control. I've got to sweep him. I've got to get my guard back, or whatever. He's in my guard. He's ahead. I've got to sweep him, or I've got to submit him. So you place that degree of intensity, that challenge on yourself. And but the drilling, in my opinion, is where it's at. Lots and lots of drilling.
Define drilling, because that word is often used in different meanings. Is a physical dynamic drilling? Is a scenario drilling? Is a troubleshooting drilling? What do you mean by that?
I think all the above. Like, I'll pick my worst positions, and I want to work on those positions as much as possible. I want to work escaping different submissions. I want to drill different sweeps, different combinations, and drill them over and over. So it's ingrained physically, where it becomes more instinctive and more natural to apply it. But I'll also play the scenario in my head. And there's a lot to be said about, of course, the mentality of your mindset, having that confidence to go in there and and just being utterly confident in yourself, not arrogant, not cocky, but confident that you can apply your game. Something that I always tell my students is, for example, is always get the takedown first, or force the other guy to feel so uncomfortable with taking you down that they're going to go to guard. Mm-hmm. I love it when people pull a guard on me. I won the Europeans that way a few years ago because I played the game. I made the guy very uncomfortable. I was very physical, and I wanted them to pull guard. They pull guard. So, having a strategy and seeing it in your mind play through, just being that confident, but always trying to score first. That way the other person is trying to catch up. And also it plays into their head. Oh, no, I'm behind. I'm down 2 points. I got to get caught up.
Yeah, the first 2 points it's very difficult to come back from that mentally. Yes. Do you think jiu-jitsu is more of a mental or physical game?
I think for me, honestly, most of it is mental. Being confident that you can perform the move under duress, and telling yourself, pushing yourself beyond positions of discomfort. When you stop and think about it, really good jiu-jitsu guys, they've mastered the art of being comfortable when they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You're in a bad position and you're confident you can escape it. I'll make a confession. I have the worst guard in the world. I have a horrible guard. I don't even like the guard. So consequently, I force myself to play guard a lot of times. But the one thing that I had a great advantage is that I was always confident of my ability to escape if someone did pass my guard. And I was always very good at defense and getting back up on my feet or sweeping them. But but I had that confidence in myself.
How is it?
I think if I didn't have that, then I just get smashed all the time.
How is it possible that somebody with so much years of experience that you have says that your guard is terrible?
Well, of course, I'm comparing my guard to like my son, or Sean, or like that. But no, I really have to confess, for my rank, for my level, I think my guard should be much better. So consequently, I work it a lot. And I've come up with different things where I can predict what the other person is going to do. They're going to do one of 4 things. And so I have an answer for each scenario. And because ultimately I want to be on top.
Isn't that part of the difficulty with jiu-jitsu itself, the fact of that it's so broad? There were so many techniques, there were so many scenarios, there were so many versions and flavors of each. We are talking about thousands, if not tens of thousands of different motions, transitions, positions, and grips, and all the other things, that it's almost impossible for us to know it all.
Yes.
So how in the world can we be really good at this?
Yes, exactly. I'll never forget, I was very fortunate to train with Hickson, with pretty much all the family, all the brothers. And back in the old school in West LA, I actually remember climbing the fence there to go to his school. And
wait, what? You climbed the fence to go to Hickson school? What?
Yeah,
how did we miss that story?
If you read his book, Breathe, there's pictures of the academy there on Peak. I remember going there. Yeah, you had to climb a fence because you couldn't park on the street. You had to park in a furniture store next door that had a big, huge parking lot, and then climb a fence to get to his school. But I remember what Hickson used to say. I'll never forget it. He used to say, advanced techniques are nothing but the basics perfected. Yeah. And if you look, I admire the ingenuity behind all these crazy new styles and games. You look at Worm Guard and the development of the different Spider Guard games and De La Hiva and all of this. I admire that. But in my point of view, keeping it simple and following the basics is what will get you through. If you look at Roger Gracie, who's widely regarded as the greatest competitor of all time, what does he do? He smashes, he passes, and he does a simple X choke from the mount. I look at Saulo and Shanji's game, my son's game, and it's the simplest game. They smash, they pass, and and invariably they get to the mount. And to me, that is the ideal of classic and beautiful jiu-jitsu. That's why my son coined the term timeless jiu-jitsu. These techniques that you can do through the rest of your life, no matter how old you are, how old you get. I admire the new innovations. I remember back when I was a blue belt, I think we had like 3 or 4 moves we did from the half guard. I remember the advent of the deep half guard, the Gordo game and all these different aspects. I knew Eddie Bravo back in the day. We were blue belts together, and I really admire him. I think what he's done with his technique, and especially this fantastic game that he's modified and developed. I respect that, but a lot of it I can't do. Mm-hmm. But I respect it and I study it so I know how to shut it down and try to shut it down in the most expeditious way I can.
Yeah, we just talked to Adam Singer, who is in his 50s now, and he's had some injuries, and he said his job now is to prove everyone that it's fundamentals versus everyone. And if he can do that, then that's how he's going to share jiu-jitsu for this point going forward.
Good for him. Yeah.
Phenomenal. Awesome. Phenomenal. Excuse me. We've been at this for a while. Soon there was time to wrap this up. But before we do, end of every episode, we do this cool thing where we're sitting in your seat, which was Felipe Costa. He asked a question. He asked a question for you, and he didn't know it will be you sitting here. Yes.
I've sparred with Felipe. Felipe is really good. I had so much fun moving with him.
Yeah, what a phenomenal guy. What a phenomenal story. But he asked a question. Gary's going to take a lead on this, and let's take a look how that's going to unfold.
Yeah, so he's going through his retirement now, early stages. And we've touched on.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry, Gary. We're talking about a different Felipe Costa. Obviously, because the Felipe I know is young. He's like in his early 20s.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right. No. But so he's talking about, he's retiring now from competition, and he is wondering with you, you're talking about going back into competition possibly, but how did you deal with it when you decided, maybe it's too much? Was it, or I'm done? Was it a blow to your ego in any way? Was it clearly thought out? Did you have a plan going forward?
Well, first of all, I have a confession to make. I've not competed that much because a couple of things. One, I invested everything I possibly could in Rafael. I saw that he had a tremendous potential and future. And so what his mom and I did was invested everything we possibly could to help him. That's why he was going to Brazil since he was 16 years old and making all these trips to Brazil, even living there. So I've not competed that much. And also I was building the school. When I came here to Oklahoma City, I didn't know anyone. I started teaching out of my garage. And it took years for me to build a school and develop it and build a clientele. So I never really had the time because of my work in the school. Plus, I had a moonlight on the side. I was actually bouncing in downtown Oklahoma City at a club to make extra money and, while building the school. And it's hard to do all that and then train for competition at the same time. So I've not competed that much. So it wasn't a big factor for me. For me, it was all about fun, just going out there. Oh, okay, I'm going to jump in the Pan Ams. I'm going to jump in the Worlds. I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. I think the second to last time I competed, I really focused. I wanted to do really well because Rafael and I have competed together 3 times. And the first time we competed, he won gold. I won silver. The second time we competed together, he won I won gold, he won silver, and then the third time I got bronze, he got gold. So what we wanted to do was gold together. We're the first American father and son black belts.
Yes.
We wanted to also be the first father and son American black belts to gold medal together. And but unfortunately that in Europe, I really trained super hard. I was really motivated, really focused. And because I wanted us to go together. But unfortunately, he missed it by 15 seconds against Lagarto. He took him down, and it was too late. Time ran out. So he got silver, and I ended up getting gold. But we focused everything on Rafael. So it wasn't hard for me. Like, if I compete again, it's more of a personal thing. Whether I win or lose, I don't care. To me, anyone that goes out there, especially at my age, in my age group, I think they're a winner just for getting out there and testing themselves. Because after all, how many men my age can even walk down their driveway, so, let alone
Gary barely does it.
Some mornings it's harder than others. Fun. Yeah, that fun thing has come up quite often today.
Yeah.
So that's a great answer.
Is that double gold still a goal for you guys?
That's why I would do it. That's why, because I would want to try for us to double gold together. It'd just be one of those things. It'd be so neat, feather in our cap to be not only the first father and son American black belts, but also, gold medal together. Yeah. And it's eluded us. We've been so close. But the last time I competed, funny thing, it was against a Chicagoan, Sean Burke.
Oh, yeah.
He's from Naperville.
Oh, yeah.
Really good guy.
Yeah.
And it was so fun.
I know Sean.
Yeah, Sean's a really good guy. He now lives in Florida. We're Facebook friends. But we had a blast. We competed, and Sean is really good.
Yeah.
And he wrestled. Yeah. And his modus operandi, he always takes everyone down, smashes them, and wins. And he and I, oh, man, we had a battle. He couldn't take me down, but I couldn't take him down. So it was just like back and forth. And hey, in our age group, Sean was like, hey, I ain't pulling guard. And I'm like, yeah, I ain't pulling guard. Like two old Rams, but we had so much fun. But he gave him the decision. But we became great friends afterward. In fact, we've met together in Chicago and had lunch together and just hung out. I'm like, man, Sean, this is kind of cool. Just, socializing, having lunch without trying to strangle each other, man, it's kind of cool. But that was the last time I competed, and Rafael won gold that year. But that was a couple of years ago. So I don't know. Like I said, if I do it, it'd just be to kind of stubbornly say, hey, I can still do it,
Well, we'll be sitting on the sidelines and watching both of you. You both have accomplished quite a bit, and I'm not even talking about the success of the academy, but I'm talking about the contribution to jiu-jitsu in U.S. and then around the world as well. I mean, what a phenomenal phenomenal team that you guys have created, and the community, and all the impact is truly appreciate it. I mean, I've been following both of you guys. I look up for both of you guys. Phenomenal.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. So as we're wrapping this up, if you're still with us and you're still listening, you will be at our academy, at RŌL Academy in Orland Park on June 25th. As this is airing up, the sign-ups will be available. Sign up. If I'm not mistaken, it's going to be a few hours, right? We're going to hang out for a few hours. This is going to be
yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a 45-minute.
No, it's not like a 45-minute in and out. I heard you do long seminars, and you love them with a lot of passion, a lot of energy. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to have my learning cap on, and I'm making notes.
Yeah, and he's not.
I've never been to Orland Park, so I'm really looking forward to going to that part of Chicago.
It's going to be a good time.
You will love it.
And Thomas is not exaggerating. When this started coming together, he was like a kid in a candy store. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody.
Awesome.
Well, as we're wrapping this up, where can anybody find you? Are you? I know you're not everywhere on social media, but is anywhere people can get a hold of you, get in touch with you? How's that work on your side?
Yes, I'm Lovato, Lovato SR BJJ at AOL.com, and these days I teach seminars all over, and absolutely love it. I'm semi-retired. I will help out Rafael at the school. If he's out of town, he'll ask me a lot of times, well, Dad, will you teach my class? And I do a lot of private lessons. And so I'm available at any time. Like I said earlier, I love traveling and meeting people all over the world. I've taught Rafael and I've taught together in Italy. I've taught in England and Spain. So I love sharing. I love meeting people. And for me, it's a special treat when I get to go back to Chicago, my hometown, and teach. And of course, enjoy being in Chicago. And then, of course, I've been from one side of Canada to the other. And so I'm always available. I thoroughly enjoy it. When I teach, it's not like I'm looking at the clock constantly, because I really, really want to see people get it and have fun. And I love seeing the look on people's face when, oh, wow, yeah, this is so much easier. This works great. Or I'll run into someone and say, hey, I've used that technique so many times and I learned from that seminar that you did at our place. I love that. I love hearing those testimonials of GBJJ. So that's where I am these days. And I thank God every day that I'm able to do this.
Well, phenomenal. We'll see you in just a few weeks as you're arriving here. And for today, let's wrap this up, and we'll see you around.
Thomas,
thank you so much.
Gary, thank you so much. You guys take care. We'll see you next month.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.